let's start off with the media's inability to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We know that prior to the Russian special military operation beginning, that the media had started to report on the Nazi threat coming out of Ukraine. Magazines like the Atlantic magazine, Atlantic Monthly, said, Ukraine's got a Nazi problem. The New York Times ran front page stories about the Nazis and how much of a problem this is. U.S. Congress, when the U.S. military would go over and train the Ukrainian military, the U.S. Congress was looking at photographs of U.S. servicemen training a Azov battalion person who had a swastika. And they said, whoa, time out. You can't do that. So they passed legislation that said you can't train the Nazis because it was problematic. That all went away when Russia started massing its troops. It's as though we forgot there was a Nazi problem. We minimized it. It suddenly was just this minority. It wasn't a big deal. So the West convinced itself to lie about the reality of the Nazi problem in Ukraine. They know what the truth is, but that truth is inconvenient with the new mission of elevating Ukraine to a cause worthy of American support. And what is that cause? The cause is going against Vladimir Putin. Notice I didn't say going against Russia, right? Because the media doesn't. I will say that there's literally no Russian experts on mainstream media today. None. You have anti-Putin experts, people who hate Putin, but you don't have anybody who can actually converse intelligently about the reality of Russia. And if you're treating this nation of 160 million people as the personification of one man, your ignorance is being worn on your sleeve. Vladimir Putin is the elected president of Russia. Now, he's been elected for many, many terms. He's been around for 22 years. Some people will say that's a dictatorship. Dictators don't win presidential elections by 54%. Dictators tend to win presidential elections by 98%, 99%. 54% is a little too close for comfort because Russia is a democracy. It's not a perfect democracy, but one of the reasons why it lacks perfection is that the United States has corrupted the political opposition by buying them, by forming them to support their own policy of regime change. Now, people say, wait a minute, Biden may have said that, but we know he didn't mean it. That's not the American policy because they said so. Ask yourself this. What was the reset of the Obama administration? You remember 2009, a nice little red button misspelled, Hillary Clinton and Sergei Lavrov pushing it and laughing and chuckling and chortling. That was a policy of regime change. We were trying to empower the sitting president, Dmitry Medvedev, who had done a cute little constitutional swap with Putin in 2008, where Putin became prime minister, Medvedev became president, because the Constitution of Russia only allowed Putin to serve 2 consecutive terms, but he could come back for a third. We decided, the United States, that we were going to empower Medvedev to become the new Boris Yeltsin. That is a weak, compliant leader who would do whatever we wanted to do so we could economically exploit Russia and keep Russia weak. And we put pressure on. We tried to bribe Medvedev. We did, we promised him things with arms control and missile defense and all this. It was so bad that in March of 2011, Vice President Biden at the time under Obama, who had the Ukrainian portfolio, flew to Moscow, and he met with the opposition, ones that we bought and paid for, and he said, Vladimir Putin shouldn't consider running for president again. It would be bad for him and bad for Russia. Sounds like a threat. Sounds like one of those mafia, I'm making him an offer he can't refuse kind of thing. It's regime change. We didn't want Vladimir Putin to be in office because Vladimir Putin was the opposite of Boris Yeltsin, a strong leader who wanted to have Russia take care of Russia first, not bow to the United States, not cave into NATO, not allow Western companies to come and economically exploit Russia's resources. And Putin came back into power. And ever since then, we've been demonizing him. We've been saying that he is the personification of evil. He's all that's wrong with Russia. He's a dictator. He's an autocrat. All the things that he's not. But the people that are saying this are people who never studied Russia. They studied Russian exploitation. What I mean by that is these are the people that were educated in the late 1980s and 1990s. They got their PhDs about how to exploit Russia. People like Michael McFaul, who became a U.S. ambassador, senior advisor, the architect of the reset. People like Fiona Hill and others. If you go back, one thing they all have in common is they wrote PhDs that attacked Putin as a dictator. It's almost as if they had the same paper. They just removed the cover and put on a cover sheet with a new name, and they just run it through a PhD paper mill. And they all said the same thing, that Vladimir Putin is a dictator, an autocrat, and they defined Russia in the person of Vladimir Putin. This is wrong. This is ignorant. It's not what it is, but that's why we have the media has bought into this. I mean, how else can you explain, William Browder, Mr. Hermitage? He was of the class that went in and economically exploited Russia. He went in there and took advantage of loose Russian tax laws, loose Russian laws to create the $250 billion hedge fund. How do you do that? You can only do that if you yourself are corrupt and you are playing a footloose and fancy free game. The Russians finally called him on it. Just like Vladimir Putin called in all the oligarchs, and as soon as he became president, said, you can't get involved in politics. You have to play a clean game. They said the same thing to people like Browder. Browder wouldn't play a clean game, so he was made persona non grata, and his hedge fund broken up. His lawyer, who's not a lawyer, by the way, Magnitsky, was arrested, died in prison, and as a result, we have the Magnitsky Act, which imposes sanctions and restrictions on Russia. But Browder's been shown to be a liar. Nobody believes any aspect of his story, and yet because now that Vladimir Putin is the enemy, Browder's now brought back into mainstream TV as if he is a Russia expert. He is brought in to explain Russia. He is a common criminal. He's a man who stole from the Russians, robbed them blind, violated their tax laws, and now he's explaining the Russian soul, I guess, to the American people. That's the absurdity of this position. They're bringing in the most radical anti-Putin elements and mainstreaming them on the media to explain Russia to the American people, but they're not explaining Russia. They're simply articulating why they hate Vladimir Putin. And so the media is just the echo chamber for this. But the beauty of it is Russia doesn't care. Putin is not losing one night's sleep because of what the West say, because it doesn't matter. And one reason why it doesn't matter is that we opted to go through the great economic divorce, the sanctions. The one leverage we had on the Russians was that 20 to 30% of the economy was inextricably linked to the West through economic relations. And so we could always pressure them on the margins. Not now. We divorced. We broke. They didn't break. We broke. And Russia is saying, thank you. It's the most liberating moment in our life. Take a look at the Russian economy right now. Biden said, I crashed the ruble. No, you didn't.
Nope.
Harder now than it was for the invasion. The stock market collapsed. No. It's all green arrows going up.
That's right.
The Russian people are suffering. Actually, their market, their shelves are full. It may not be brand name Western stuff, but they're not wanting, they're not lacking, they're there. Is it hurting them? Yeah. Anytime you make this kind of transition, it's inconvenient. Are there economic hiccups? Sure, there's a higher inflation rate than normal, but it's all being brought under control because the Russians have a plan, because Joe Biden told Putin he was going to do this back in June 2021 when they met in Geneva. So Putin had months to come up with a plan. Guess who doesn't have a plan? West. We promised these sanctions thinking that Russia would never, ever, take it to the limit, that we'd never have to implement these because they'd be so horrible. I mean, these are massive things. I mean, whatever, term you wanted to throw on there, we threw on there. Newsflash, Vladimir Putin doesn't bluff. Doesn't bluff. There's no bluff in him. He's not prone to hyperbole. He doesn't throw out irresponsible threats. But when he says something, the wise man would take it to the bank, because it's going to happen.
Hmm.
And he said, if you ignore my diplomatic outreach in December 2021, I will invade Ukraine. We ignored his diplomatic outreach. He invaded Ukraine. And now we were stuck going, I guess we have to sanction him. But Germany went, all right, but Joe, you told me when I was visiting you that you had some liquid natural gas that you could bring over here. Oh, yeah, no, we don't have any liquid natural gas we can bring to you. We got nothing. Your economy is going to collapse. The French economy is going to collapse. The European economy is going to collapse. That's the reality. As bad as this hurts Russia, it's hurting Europe more because Joe Biden didn't have a plan, because Joe Biden didn't treat Russia seriously, because Joe Biden bought into the cartoonish caricature of Russia as a nation ruled by one man, Vladimir Putin, whom we're not even getting right. We call him corrupt. He's the least corrupted politician in Europe today. We call him irrational. There's nothing impulsive about Putin. Everything he does is planned very carefully, with the consequences thought out well in advance. That's why he has a plan, because he thought out the consequences well in advance.